Live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Welcome back to Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler, live here in the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom. And as we've been talking about here, it is warm outside right now, and it's going to get hot over the next few days, up into the upper 90s, most likely for Sunday and Monday. And with that, we want to talk about how to make sure that you're staying safe for yourself and friends and family and even your neighbors. So to do so, from the Oregon Department of Emergency Management, we've got Erin joining us right now with some advice and just some good knowledge, as you always have here for us, Erin, about what to do in these situations. And I think, for the heat, for this and what's coming up, what are some of the big things that you think people should be thinking about when it comes to this?
Well, the biggest thing is that this is our first hot weather that we've had this year, and at least on the west side of the Cascades and in the Portland area, and our bodies have not acclimated to the heat. Your body does eventually acclimate over time if you're exposed to higher temperatures, and hotter parts of the country experience this. But here in Oregon, we tend to get these sudden heat spikes, especially early in the summer, and our bodies don't have a chance to acclimate, and that puts you at a higher risk for things like heat exhaustion and heat stroke. And so really making sure that you're taking precautions, doing physical activity in the cooler parts of the day, taking cold showers, keeping your air conditioning on if you have it. If you don't, finding a place where you can go. There are cooling shelters that are being set up in the Portland metro area. And you can go to publicalerts.org/heat for resources, local resources in the Portland area. Or just go to 211.org to find more resources about cooling shelters and things like that. The folks that are most at risk for heat, stroke, and exhaustion are usually older adults, infants, people who are pregnant, people who work outdoors a lot or do a lot of strenuous physical activity outside. Or people with chronic underlying illnesses. So just keeping an eye on those folks. And also the people who usually suffer the most from heat stroke are people who live alone or more socially isolated. So if you know neighbors or have friends or family members who live alone and they don't have air conditioning, checking on them and making sure that they have a way to stay cool.
Yeah, so thinking about that, from the standpoint of, a couple of things that you mentioned there. So your body's acclimating. That's pretty interesting. Yeah, since we are not used to that here, versus if you're in the South or something like that, I'm sure that's a normal thing, or Arizona. But for when it comes to, some of the people who are more vulnerable, is it important, to even pay attention to your neighbors, or are there things that you can do to help them out if somebody could be more at risk?
Yeah, checking on your neighbors is always the go-to for any weather-related emergencies, be it ice or heat, making sure that they have the resources they need. We rely on our neighbors to take care of each other, and it's a good way to kind of combat that social isolation and loneliness epidemic is to get to know your neighbors. And learning the signs of heat exhaustion and heat stroke are really important too, because when someone is suffering from heat-related illness, one of the main signs is they start becoming disoriented or not really being in touch with what their body's telling them. And it's harder for them to tell that they're suffering from heat stroke or heat-related illnesses. And so just keeping an eye on people. If people seem confused, if they're sweating a lot, or more alarming, if they're clearly hot but they stop sweating, that is usually a first sign. If you stop sweating and you're clearly very hot and flushed and you have a high temperature above 103 degrees, call 911. That is a medical emergency, and you need to get the paramedics there to help treat them.
That's very good information to know. So if you see somebody that's going through that, call 911 at that point. What are some steps that you can do to try to prevent getting into that heat stroke or any overheating issues that come with this?
Well, some of this is the fun stuff, right? You get to go to splash pads, you get to run through sprinklers, you can go swimming, but we do caution you that if you're going to natural bodies of water, a lot of our water is still fairly cold, especially this time of year, and water temperature and air temperature are different. And so 55, 65 degrees in an air temperature seems perfectly warm. Most of us wouldn't be alarmed by that, and it wouldn't cause hypothermia. But in the water, 55 to 65 degrees can cause moderate hypothermia. Anything below about 55 degrees can put you at risk, a high risk for severe hypothermia. And so it's really important, especially if you're going to the river or going to the lakes to cool off, to be really aware of how cold the water is and the signs of hypothermia setting in. People think it's 100 degrees outside. How can I get hypothermia? But you get into the water, your muscles start getting weak. You can't make a fist real well. And people, even strong swimmers, if they don't have a flotation device, can go under very quickly.
Yeah, it can be very, very dangerous out there with that kind of water. And anything else that you think is important for people to know?
Well, in the Portland metro area, again, publicalerts.org is a great resource for any kind of hazards. Anytime there's any kind of emergency, go there. Make sure you're signed up for emergency alerts, of course. 211 is a great resource for additional resources. Also, Oregon.gov/heat has a lot of tips on how to stay safe in the heat. But in addition to this, just bearing in mind that we are having one of the driest seasons that we've ever had, or at least in recent memory, and approximately half of Oregon's counties are already in drought conditions. And to date, we've responded to 360 wildfires, and we've seen about 8,000 acres burned already. Many of these fires have required evacuations, and this weekend, with the rising temperatures and the dry conditions, we're going to see an increased potential for fires and conflagrations, especially in the Columbia Gorge in the eastern part of the state. So be fire safe. If you're out there enjoying the outdoors, go to tips for fire prevention at keeporegongreen.org.
All right, lots of opportunities there, lots of ways to just make sure that you're staying safe and staying cool out there. So great advice as always, Erin. Thank you so much for joining us. I always appreciate you getting the word out about everything like this.
Thank you so much.
And for everybody watching, this is Fox 12 Now. As I mentioned, we're live streaming here, so we're going to go ahead and take a break. We'll come back. We'll continue on here throughout the afternoon. We've got a lot of coverage for you on a lot of different topics, but we'll talk to you right after this with more.